The HFY had ruled the stars for 40,000 years. They were tall creatures with gray scales and cold yellow eyes. They had conquered 17 star systems and made slaves of every species they found. But their true power did not come from their ships or their soldiers. Their true power came from the Varaks. The Varaks were dragons. Not the dragons from human fairy tales, but something far worse. They were living nightmares made of black scales and fire. Each one was larger than a building. Each one had teeth like swords and claws that could tear through metal. The HFY had captured these creatures long ago and turned them into weapons. They kept them hungry. They kept them angry. They used them to break the spirit of every world they conquered. When a new species joined the Empire, they had to pass a test. They had to give one of their children to the Varaks. If the dragon ate the child quickly, the species would become slaves. If the dragon rejected the child and tore it apart in anger, the species would be destroyed completely. There was no third option. There had never been a third option in 40,000 years. Admiral Grathka stood on the observation deck of the ceremonial station. He had watched this ritual many times before. He knew how it would end. The humans had been easy to defeat. Their ships were fast but weak. Their weapons were clever but not powerful enough. Earth had fallen in 3 weeks. Now came the final step. The human ambassador stood nearby. Her name was Patricia Holloway. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had fought hard to save her people. She had offered everything she had: money, technology, her own life. But the HFY wanted only one thing: a child. The guards brought the boy forward. His name was Danny Cole. He was 6 years old. He had brown hair that stuck up in the back and a small round face covered in freckles. He was wearing clothes that were too big for him because his own clothes had been lost when the bombs fell on his city. Danny did not understand what was happening. He knew his father was dead. He knew his mother had been taken away after she started screaming and would not stop. He knew these scary aliens wanted him to walk towards something. He knew everyone was looking at him with sad eyes. Patricia Holloway watched the boy walk past her. She wanted to grab him. She wanted to run. But there were guns pointed at both of them, and if she moved, they would kill her and take Danny anyway. So she stood still and felt her heart break into pieces. The pit was 100 feet wide and very deep. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to eat the light. Danny walked to the edge and looked down. He could not see the bottom. He could only smell something bad, like rotten eggs and old meat. Then something moved in the darkness below. The sound came first. It was a low rumble that Danny felt in his chest. Then came the scratching of claws on stone. Then came the eyes, 2 points of orange fire rising up from the black. The Varaks climbed out of the pit. Danny had never seen anything so big in his whole life. The creature was larger than his school had been. Its scales were the color of midnight, and smoke leaked from between its teeth. Its wings were folded against its back like black leather blankets. When it opened its mouth, Danny saw rows and rows of teeth, each one longer than his arm. The dragon looked at Danny. Danny looked at the dragon. Everyone on the observation deck held their breath. Admiral Grathka leaned forward, waiting for the quick snap of jaws that would seal humanity's fate as slaves. Patricia Holloway closed her eyes, unable to watch. Danny's legs were shaking so hard he thought they might fall off. Tears ran down his cheeks. He wanted his mom. He wanted his dad. He wanted to go home, but home was gone now. Everything was gone. The Varaks lowered its massive head until it was just a few feet away from the boy. Its breath washed over Danny, hot and smelling like fire. Its orange eyes stared at him with an expression Danny could not read. Danny did something that surprised even himself. He spoke. "Are you hungry?" he asked in a small, broken voice. I'm hungry too. They haven't fed me since yesterday. The Varax did not move. It just kept staring at Danny with those burning eyes. Danny wiped his nose with his sleeve. He was still crying, but something had changed in the way he was looking at the creature. He tilted his head to one side. You look sad, Danny said. Are you sad? I'm sad too. I miss my mom and dad. Admiral Grathka frowned. This was taking too long. The Vorak should have eaten the child by now or rejected him. Something was wrong. The dragon's nostrils flared. It drew in a deep breath, taking in Danny's scent. Then it did something that no Varax had ever done in 40,000 years of recorded history. It sat down. The creature folded its massive legs beneath its body and tucked its wings close. It lowered its head all the way to the ground, resting its chin on the stone floor in front of Danny. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The Kethvari officers looked at each other in confusion. This was not supposed to happen. This could not happen. Patricia Holloway opened her eyes. She saw the enormous dragon lying before the tiny boy like a dog waiting for its master. She did not understand what she was seeing. Danny looked at the great head resting in front of him. The dragon's eye was bigger than his whole body, but somehow it did not seem scary anymore. It seemed tired. It seemed lonely. Danny reached out his small hand. His fingers were still trembling. He touched the dragon's snout. The scales were warm and smooth, like sun-heated stone. The dragon did not pull away. Instead, it closed its eyes and made a sound that Danny had never heard before. It was not a roar or a growl. It was softer, like a cat purring, but much, much deeper. Admiral Grathka slammed his fist against the railing. What is the meaning of this? Someone explain this now. But no one could explain it. No one had ever seen anything like it. No one knew that they were watching the beginning of the end of an empire that had lasted longer than human civilization had existed. Danny kept his hand on the dragon's nose. He was still scared. He was still sad. But for the first time since the sky had fallen and his world had ended, he did not feel completely alone. It's okay, Danny whispered to the dragon. I won't hurt you. I promise. The dragon opened one great eye and looked at the boy. And somewhere deep inside that ancient tortured mind, something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to wake up. The Kethvari did not know what to do with Danny Cole. For 3 days, the High Command argued about the boy and the dragon. Some wanted to kill them both and pretend this had never happened. Others wanted to study them and find out what had gone wrong. In the end, they chose to study. Senior scientist Methkira was put in charge of the project. She was an old Kethvari female with pale scales and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She did not believe in miracles or magic. She believed in facts and data. And the facts told her that something very strange had happened in that pit. They built a special room for Danny next to the Varax pit. It had a bed and a bathroom and cameras on every wall. Guards stood outside at all times. Danny was not a prisoner exactly, but he was not free either. He was something in between. Every day, Methkara came to ask Danny questions. She wanted to know everything about him. Where was he born? What did his parents do? Had he ever seen a dragon before? Did he have any special powers? Danny answered her questions as best he could. He was born in a place called Ohio. His dad fixed cars and his mom worked at a hospital. He had never seen a dragon before, only in movies. And no, he did not have any special powers. He was just a regular kid. This frustrated Methkira. There had to be something different about this boy. There had to be a reason the Varax had behaved so strangely. But she could not find it. Meanwhile, Danny spent most of his time at the edge of the pit, talking to the dragon. The Varax would come up from the darkness whenever it heard Danny's voice. It would rest its head on the floor and listened while Danny talked about his life back home. Danny told the dragon about his school and his friends. He told it about his dog named Max, who had died in the bombing. He told it about his mom's cooking and his dad's bad jokes. The dragon never spoke back, of course, but Danny felt like it was listening. And after everything that had happened, having someone listen meant a lot. "I'm going to call you Max," Danny told the dragon one day, "after my dog. Is that okay?" The dragon made that low humming sound it always made when Danny was near. Danny decided that meant yes. The guards thought the boy was crazy. The scientists thought he was strange. But nobody tried to stop him from talking to the dragon because nobody knew what would happen if they did. 1 week after the ceremony, something new happened. It was feeding day. The HFY fed their Varax by dropping live animals into the pit. They used creatures from conquered worlds, things that looked like pigs or cows, but with too many legs or eyes. The Varax would eat them quickly and then go back to sleep in the darkness. But this time, when the feeding cage opened and the animals fell into the pit, Max did not eat them. The dragon just lay there at the bottom, looking up toward the room where Danny was sleeping. The animals ran around in circles, confused and scared, but Max paid them no attention. Meth Kira watched the video feed with growing concern. A Varax that would not eat was a Varax that would die. These creatures needed huge amounts of food to survive. If Max stopped eating, he would weaken and eventually starve. She went to Danny's room and woke him up. "The creature is not eating," she said. "You need to make it eat." Danny rubbed his eyes and yawned. He did not understand why this was his problem, but he could see that the alien lady was worried. So he got out of bed and walked to the edge of the pit. "Max?" He called down into the darkness. "Are you hungry? They brought you food." The dragon's eyes appeared, 2 orange lights rising up from below. Max climbed out of the pit and stood before Danny, ignoring the animals that were still running around at the bottom. "You need to eat," Danny said. "You'll get sick if you don't eat." Max made a low sound and pushed his nose against Danny's chest, almost knocking the boy over. Danny laughed for the first time since his world had ended. He reached up and scratched the dragon's snout like he used to scratch his dog's ears. Okay, I get it. You missed me, but you still need to eat." Danny looked down into the pit at the scared animals running in circles. He felt bad for them. They had not asked to be food. "Can you bring them up here?" Danny asked the dragon. "Maybe if you eat up here with me, it won't be so lonely." Methkira started to object. This was against all rules. Varax feeding was supposed to happen in controlled conditions, away from anything valuable or important. But before she could speak, Max turned and jumped back into the pit. A moment later, the dragon returned carrying one of the animals gently in its mouth. It placed the creature on the floor near Danny, then looked at the boy as if waiting for something. Danny stared at the animal. It was making scared noises and shaking badly. I don't want to watch you eat it," Danny said quietly. "That makes me sad." The dragon tilted its head. Then, slowly and carefully, it picked up the animal and turned away from Danny. It walked to the far side of the platform, out of the boy's sight. Before eating done, when it came back, its mouth was clean. It lay down next to Danny and rested its head in the boy's lap. Methkira watched all of this with an expression she had never worn before. It was something like fear mixed with wonder. In 40,000 years, no Varax had ever shown consideration for another being. They were weapons. They were monsters. They did not care about anyone's feelings, but this one did. This one cared about a 6-year-old human boy who had nothing special about him except a kind heart and a willingness to see the creature as something more than a monster. That night, Methkira wrote her report. She told the High Command that the Varax called World's End had bonded with the human child. She told them that the creature would only respond to the boy now. She told them that she did not know what this meant or what would happen next, but she suspected, deep in her old bones, that something had changed forever. She suspected that this small boy had done something that armies and weapons and 40,000 years of Kethvari power could not undo. She was right to be afraid, because across the Empire, slaves were already whispering about the boy who tamed the dragon. And whispers, as the Kethvari should have known, can become screams very quickly. 6 months passed on the station. Danny grew a little taller. His hair got longer because no one remembered to cut it. He learned some words in the Kethvari language, mostly bad words that the guards said when they thought he was not listening. But the biggest change was in Max. The dragon was different now. The fire in his eyes had cooled to a warm glow instead of angry flames. He no longer roared at the guards or snapped at anyone who came near the pit. He spent most of his time lying in the sun lamps that Methkira had installed after Danny asked for them. He never got to see the sun before, Danny had explained. He was always in that dark hole. That's not fair. The guards thought this was foolish. Why would a monster care about sunlight? But Methkira had agreed because she wanted to see what would happen. And what happened was that Max would lie under those lamps for hours, his eyes half closed, making that rumbling purr sound whenever Danny sat next to him. Danny had made up stories about Max. He told the dragon that they would escape someday and fly to Earth together. He told him about all the good things on Earth, like ice cream and pizza and Saturday morning cartoons. Max could not understand the words, but he seemed to enjoy listening to them. The scientists came every day to run tests and take measurements. They stuck needles in Max's scales to take blood samples. They put machines on his head to measure his brain activity. Max allowed all of this because Danny asked him to. "They're just trying to understand you," Danny would say while scratching the dragon's snout. "It doesn't hurt too much, right?" Max would huff warm air at the boy, which Danny decided meant, "I don't like it, but I'll be good because you asked." The bond between them grew stronger every day. Danny could tell when Max was hungry or tired or sad just by looking at him. Max could sense when Danny was having a bad dream and would make soft sounds until the boy woke up, but not. Everyone was happy about this situation. Admiral Grathka had been removed from command after the failed ceremony, but he still had friends in high places. He watched the reports from the station with growing anger. The Varaks were supposed to be weapons of terror. They were supposed to make conquered species afraid. But now the slaves were telling stories about the dragon who loved a human child. They were starting to hope. And hope was dangerous. The Admiral went to the High Council with a plan. "Kill the boy," he said. "Kill him and the dragon will return to normal. Even if it does not, we can drug it or starve it back into obedience. This situation cannot continue." The council listened. They debated. In the end, they agreed. The order was sent. Eliminate the human child. Make it look like an accident if possible. If not, make it look like the dragon finally ate him. Either way, this story needed to end. But the council made a mistake. They sent the order through normal channels. And one of the communication officers was secretly passing information to the human. Resistance. Ambassador Patricia Holloway had not been idle during the past 6 months. She was being held in a prison on the far side of the station. The prison walls could not stop information. She had built a network of contacts among the slaves and servants who worked on the station. She knew about Danny and Max. She knew about the bond between them. And now she knew about the kill order. Patricia had to warn Danny. But how? She was locked in a cell with guards outside her door. She could not send messages without them being read by Kethvari sensors. Then she had an idea. Every 3 days, a servant came to clean her cell. The servant was from a species called the Veltai, small blue creatures with big eyes and quick hands. They had been slaves to the HFY for 2,000 years. They had learned to be invisible, to go unnoticed, to survive. When the servant came the next day, Patricia spoke without looking at her. "The dragon's child is in danger. The order has been given. Tomorrow night." The servant said nothing. She continued cleaning as if she had not heard. But when she left, she went straight to another servant, who told another, who told another. By nightfall, the message had reached a cook who worked in the kitchens near Danny's room. The cook was an old Veltai named Nira. She had no children of her own, because the HFY did not allow slaves to have families. But she had watched Danny from a distance over the past months. She had seen him share his food with the smaller servants. She had seen him say thank you when no one else ever did. She had seen him treat a monster with kindness and receive kindness in return. And Ira made a choice. It was a choice that could get her killed, but she made it anyway. That night, she brought Danny his dinner as usual. But this time, she leaned close and whispered in his ear, "Bad men coming tomorrow. They want to hurt you. You must run. Take your dragon and run far away." Danny's eyes went wide. "But where?" "I don't know where to go." Nira pressed something into his hand. It was a small device, a communication chip that she had stolen from a guard's broken equipment months ago. "Call this number when you are away. Friends will help." Then she was gone, shuffling out the door like any other night. Danny sat very still for a long time. He was only 6 years old. He did not understand politics or war or empires. But he understood that someone wanted to hurt him, and he understood that Max would protect him. He got up and walked to the edge of the pit. "Max," he called softly. "Wake up. We need to talk." The dragon's eyes opened in the darkness below. Orange fire looked up at the small boy who had changed everything. "We have to leave," Danny said. "Tomorrow. They want to kill me, and I think they want to kill you too. Can you fly? Can you take us somewhere safe?" Max rose from the pit. He spread his wings wide, wider than Danny had ever seen them spread before. They reached from one wall to the other, black leather that seemed to absorb the light. The dragon lowered his head to Danny's level. His eye was bigger than the boy's whole body, but it held no threat. Only understanding. Only loyalty. Danny put both hands on Max's snout. "I trust you," he said. "I trust you more than anyone." Max made that deep rumbling sound, and somewhere in his ancient wounded mind, he made a promise. He would protect this child. He would die before he let anyone hurt him. Tomorrow would come. The soldiers would come, but they would find the pit empty and the sky full of fire. The boy and his dragon were going home. The soldiers came at midnight, 12 of them in black armor with weapons that could cut through steel. Admiral Grathka had sent his best men. He wanted no mistakes this time. They moved through the station in silence. The guards outside Danny's room had been replaced with loyal troops. The cameras had been turned off. Everything was ready. The squad leader opened the door to Danny's room. It was empty. The bed was still warm. The boy had been here recently, but he was gone now. An alarm started screaming throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The soldiers ran toward the Varax pit, already knowing what they would find. The pit was empty too. The ceiling above it had been torn open. Through the hole, they could see stars. Danny Cole and the dragon called Max were gone. Far away from the station, moving through the cold darkness of space, Max flew faster than he had ever flown before. His wings were made for this, for soaring between stars, though he had not used them in thousands of years. The HFY had kept him caged since before humanity had learned to make fire. Danny rode on the dragon's back, held in place by a harness they had made from blankets and rope. The boy was wearing a mask that Max had grabbed from an emergency supply closet before they escaped. It gave him air to breathe in the emptiness of space. Danny was scared. He had never flown before, not even in an airplane. And now he was flying on a dragon through the stars with no idea where they were going. But he was also free. For the first time in months, he was free. "Where are we going, Max?" Danny shouted into the wind that was not really wind because there was no air in space. But somehow he could still feel it rushing past. Max turned his great head slightly, and Danny saw something he had never seen before. The dragon was smiling. Or at least, Danny thought it looked like a smile. They flew for hours. Danny fell asleep against Max's warm scales and dreamed of home. When he woke up, they were approaching a small moon covered in gray dust. There was a ship waiting for them. It was a human ship, battered and old, with burn marks on its sides from battle damage. As Max landed on the moon's surface, people came out of the ship. They were humans, real humans, and they were looking at Danny and Max with expressions of wonder. A woman walked forward. She had dark skin and close-cropped hair, and eyes that had seen too much death. "Danny Cole?" she asked. Danny nodded. He was too surprised to speak. "My name is Grace Monroe. I'm with the Human Resistance. Ambassador Holloway told us you might be coming." She looked up at Max, who was watching her with careful orange eyes. "She didn't tell us you'd be bringing a friend." Danny slid down from Max's back. His legs were wobbly after the long flight. "This is Max," he said. "He's not going to hurt anyone. He's good." Grace looked at the dragon for a long moment. She had heard the stories about the Virax. Everyone in the galaxy had heard those stories. But looking at the creature now, seeing how it curled protectively around the small boy, she found it hard to be afraid. "Then he's welcome," Grace said. "Any friend of yours is a friend of ours." The Resistance base was hidden inside an asteroid field. It was not much, just a collection of old ships and mining platforms strung together with cables and hope. But it was home to over 2,000 humans who had escaped the Kethvari invasion. Danny and Max became heroes overnight. The story spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A human child had tamed the most terrible weapon in the Empire. The unbreakable Virax had broken for a 6-year-old boy with nothing special about him. Except kindness. On slave worlds everywhere, people started to hope again. They whispered the story to each other in work camps and mines and factories. They drew pictures of a boy riding a dragon through the stars. They gave their children a new name to wish upon, and the Kethvari grew afraid. The High Council sent ships to hunt for Danny and Max. They offered rewards for information. They threatened death for anyone who helped the fugitives. But they could not find them, and every day that passed made the story grow stronger. 3 months after the escape, something unexpected happened. Another Virax refused to obey. It was on a planet called Crickstar 9, where slaves worked in underground mines, digging for precious metals. A Virax named Destroyer of Worlds had been stationed there for 500 years, keeping the slaves in line through terror. But one day, without warning, the creature stopped responding to its handlers. It flew to the highest mountain on the planet and sat there, looking up at the sky. It would not eat. It would not fight. It would not move. The Kethvari sent soldiers to force it back to work. The dragon killed them all. Then more Virax started acting strange. Some stopped eating, like Max had done at first. Some flew away from their posts and never came back. Some turned on their handlers and freed the slaves they had been guarding. Nobody knew why. The scientists could not explain it. The generals could not stop it. But Danny Cole had a guess. Max talks to them, Danny told Grace one night while sitting by a fire in the asteroid base. Max was curled around him like a giant scaly blanket. Not with words, with, "I don't know. I know." With feelings? He tells them about me. He tells them that not everyone wants to hurt them. Grace shook her head in amazement. You changed everything, kid. You know that? You changed the whole galaxy. Danny scratched Max behind his ear ridge, where the scales were softer. I didn't do anything special, he said. I just wanted to be nice. My mom always said being nice was important. At the mention of his mother, Danny's face grew sad. He still did not know where she was or if she was alive. Grace put a hand on his shoulder. We're looking for her, she said. We've got people searching every prison camp in the system. We're gonna find her, Danny, I promise. Danny nodded and leaned against Max's warm side. The war was just beginning. There would be battles ahead, and loss and pain. But for the first time since the Kethvari had arrived, humanity had something they had lost. They had hope. They had a symbol. They had a boy and his dragon, and that was more powerful than any weapon ever made. 3 years passed. Danny Cole was 9 years old now. He was taller and thinner, with serious eyes that had seen too much war. But he still laughed sometimes, especially when Max did something silly like chasing shooting stars or blowing smoke rings to make the younger kids in the resistance smile. The war had been long and hard. Many people had died on both sides. But slowly, system by system, the Kethvari Empire was falling apart. The Varax had been the key. Without their dragons of terror, the Kethvari were just another species with ships and guns. And there were many species in the galaxy who had suffered under their rule for thousands of years. When the Varax stopped fighting for their masters, those species rose up. The Veltai, the little blue people who had been slaves the longest, were the first to rebel. They were small and weak, but they knew all the secrets of their masters. They knew where the weapons were stored and how the ships worked and which commanders were stupid enough to be tricked. Other species followed. The Graxter, the Manathi, the Halden. Names that Danny had never heard before became allies in a war that grew bigger every day. And everywhere they went, they told the story of the boy who had tamed the dragon. Danny did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. He missed his mom. He missed his old life where the biggest problem was homework and bedtime. But he kept going because Max needed him. And because people seemed to feel braver when they saw him. Ambassador Patricia Holloway had escaped from prison during a rescue mission 2 years ago. Now she led the diplomatic side of the resistance, talking to different species and building the alliance that would finally defeat the Kethvari. She was good at it. She had spent her whole life talking to people who did not want to listen. She came to Danny one morning with news. We found your mother. Danny jumped up so fast he almost fell over. Where? Is she okay? Can I see her? Patricia smiled, the first real smile Danny had seen on her face in months. She's in a labor camp on a moon called Veth 7. We're planning a rescue mission. And yes, you can come. The mission was dangerous. Veth 7 was deep in Kethvari territory, surrounded by warships and defense platforms. Getting in would be hard. Getting out would be harder. But Danny did not care. He would fly through fire to see his mom again. Max carried them through space faster than any ship could travel. A small team rode on his back, holding tight as the dragon weaved between asteroids and dodged enemy patrols. They reached Veth 7 just as the sun was setting over the gray, dusty moon. The labor camp was an ugly place. Concrete buildings with no windows. Guard towers with bright lights. Fences made of energy that would kill anyone who touched them. Max landed outside the fence and roared. The sound was so loud that it shook the buildings. Guards came running out, weapons raised. But when they saw the dragon, most of them dropped their guns and ran. They had heard the stories. They knew what Max had done to soldiers who tried to hurt his boy. Danny jumped down from Max's back and ran toward the camp. The fences went down when the power stations exploded behind him, destroyed by Max's fire. The prisoners came stumbling out into the open, confused and scared. They were thin and dirty, wearing ragged clothes and looking at the sky with eyes that had forgotten what hope felt like. Danny searched the crowd desperately. There were so many faces, so many people who needed help. Then he saw her. She was thinner than he remembered. Her hair had turned gray in places. Her hands were rough from years of hard work. But her eyes were the same. Her eyes were home. "Mom!" Lisa Cole turned at the sound of her son's voice. For a moment, she did not believe what she was seeing. She had dreamed of this so many times, and every time she woke up to cold concrete and darkness. But this time, the dream did not end. This time, her boy was running toward her, alive and healthy and real. They crashed into each other so hard they both fell down. Lisa held Danny like she would never let go, and Danny held her right back. "I found you," Danny said through tears. "I found you, Mom. I never stopped looking." Lisa could not speak. She just held her son and cried, and thanked every god she had ever heard of. Max walked over slowly, careful not to scare the other prisoners. He lowered his head until it was level with Lisa. She looked at the dragon with wide eyes. This was the monster that had been meant to kill her son. This was the creature that had haunted her nightmares for 3 years. "Mom, this is Max," Danny said, wiping his face. "He's my friend. He's the one who kept me safe." Lisa looked at the dragon for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his snout, just like Danny had done so long ago. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for protecting my baby." Max made that rumbling purr sound and closed his eyes. The war ended 6 months later. The Kethvari High Council surrendered after their home world was surrounded by Alliance ships. Admiral Grathka tried to escape, but was caught by a group of freed slaves who remembered what he had done. There were ceremonies and treaties and long, boring meetings that Danny did not understand. Patricia Holloway became the first human ambassador to the new Galactic Council. The Varax were given their freedom and a planet of their own, far from anyone who might want to use them as weapons again. Danny and his mom and Max went home to Earth. It was not the same Earth that Danny remembered. The cities had been rebuilt, but they looked different now. There were monuments to the people who had died and parks where battlefields used to be, but it was still home. They settled in a house in the countryside, far from crowds and cameras. Danny went back to school, which was strange at first. The other kids did not know how to treat him. He was famous, the boy who had tamed the dragon, but he did not act famous. He acted like any other 9-year-old who just wanted to play soccer and eat pizza. Max slept in the field behind their house. He was too big to fit inside, but he did not mind. He liked being able to see the sky, which still amazed him after thousands of years in darkness. Sometimes, at night, Danny would sneak outside and lie against Max's warm scales and look at the stars. "Do you miss it?" Danny asked one night. "Flying around and being important?" Max huffed warm air at him, which Danny had learned meant, "That is a silly question." "Yeah," Danny said, smiling. "I guess not." "This is better." Lisa watched them from the kitchen window, washing dishes and feeling something she had almost forgotten how to feel. The galaxy would tell stories about Danny Cole and his dragon for 1,000 years. They would write books and make movies and build statues. But the truth was simpler than any story. A scared little boy had been kind to a monster, and the monster had decided to be kind back. That was all. That was everything. In a universe full of weapons and war and pain, kindness had won. It would not always win. There would be other wars, other monsters, other darkness. But for now, on a small blue planet called Earth, a boy and his dragon slept under the stars. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was human.